Irregular College, Grade 2, English, Grammar, Comparative and Superlative Adjectives. Hi there. Today we are going to learn about comparative and superlative adjectives. I hope you all are ready. Fantastic. Let's recap on adjectives. What is an adjective? Adjective is a word which describes a noun or a pronoun. Now, let's look at the examples given below for adjectives. Tall, short, big, small, fat, thin, thick are some of the examples for adjectives. Now, look at the picture given below. What can you see? There are some trees. How can you describe trees? You can describe this is a tall tree. This is a tall tree. Tall is an adjective and you are describing the tree as a tall tree. This is a tall tree. Now, let's learn about comparative adjectives. A comparative adjective is a word that describes a noun by comparing it to another noun. For example, the jet is faster than the car. The jet is faster than the car. We are comparing jet and a car. Today is warmer than yesterday. Today is warmer than yesterday. We are comparing today's weather with yesterday's. Comparative adjectives typically end in er and are followed by the word than. Now look at those words given below. These are comparative adjectives. We have add er at the end of the word and have turned them into comparative adjectives. Smaller, faster, higher. These are some of the examples for comparative adjectives. Sometimes, instead of adding er to the end of the word, we have to add the word more or less in front of the adjective to make it to comparative adjective. For example, interesting. We add more in front and say it more interesting. Difficult, more difficult. Expensive, less expensive. Let's try to make sentences using comparative adjectives. I find mathematics is more difficult than environmental studies. Traveling to England is more expensive than traveling to India. His house is larger than my house. Now look at the next sentence carefully. His house is more large than my house. His house is more large than my house. Do you think this is a correct sentence? Yes, this is not a correct sentence. We cannot use more in front of large to make it comparative. We cannot use more or less in front of any adjective. We can only use more or less in front of an adjective that has more than two syllables. Relatively, these words are quite long. Let's learn how comparative adjectives are formed. First, we add er at the end of the adjective and then convert them into comparative adjectives. Tall, we add er at the end of the word tall, and then comparative adjective taller is formed. Old, older. Short, shorter. Now let's use a comparative adjective in a sentence. My brother is taller than me. If an adjective ends in consonant before a vowel, we have to double the last consonant and add er at the end of the word. Now, look at those examples given below. Big. I is a vowel. T is a consonant. So, we double the consonant and add er at the end of the word. Big, bigger. Hot, hotter. Now let's make a sentence using a comparative adjective. The elephant is bigger than the bear. The elephant is bigger than the bear. If an adjective ends with y, for example, happy, change the y to I and add er to form a comparative adjective. Now look at those examples. Happy, happier. Heavy, heavier. Now let's make a sentence. The whale is heavier than the dolphin. The whale is heavier than the dolphin. Irregular comparatives. A small number of adjectives are irregular in the way they make comparative forms. Irregular adjectives use completely different forms. Now, look at some of the irregular comparative adjectives listed below. Good, better, bad, worst, little, less, much, more. Now, let's make a sentence using one of the irregular comparative adjectives. You play tennis better than I do. You play tennis better than I do. Now, it's time for us to learn about superlative adjectives. Superlative adjectives are used to describe an object which is at the upper or lower limit of its quality. We add est at the end of the adjective to form a superlative adjective. Now, look at those examples given above. Tall, tallest. We have add est at the end of the word tall to make it superlative adjective. Tall, tallest. Small, smallest. Fast, fastest. High, highest. Now, let's make some sentences using superlative adjectives. Everest is the highest mountain in the world. River Nile is the longest river in the world. My house is the largest one in our neighborhood. Did you realize that there is being used just before all the superlative adjectives? The highest, the longest, the largest. Irregular superlative adjectives. Just like a small number of comparative adjectives, we have a small number of superlative adjectives as well. A small number of adjectives are regular in the way they make superlative forms. Regular adjectives use completely different forms. Now let's look at some of the examples for irregular superlatives. Bad, worst, good, best, less, least. Today is the best day of my life. Today is the best day of my life. This is the least expensive car I ever had. Did you notice that there is being used just before the superlative adjective? The best, the least. Now you can see a table of adjectives that we have formed into comparative and superlative adjectives. You can read along with me. Tall, taller, tallest. Nice, nicer, nicest. Fat, fatter, fattest. Big, bigger, biggest. Sad, sadder, saddest. Old, older, oldest. Heavy, heavier, heaviest. Happy, happier, happiest. Pretty, prettier, prettiest. Important, more important, most important. Good, better, best. Bad, worse, worst. Little, less, least. Can you help me to find comparative and superlative adjectives? Okay, great. First picture. Nice, nicer, nicest. Can you help me to find the comparative adjective? Yours is nicer. Nicer is the comparative adjective. Let's look for the superlative adjective. Is it nice or nicest? Nicest is the superlative adjective. Now let's move on to the second picture. Big, bigger, biggest. Can you find which one is the superlative adjective? Is it big, bigger, or biggest? Correct. The superlative adjective is biggest, the biggest. Now let's look for the comparative adjective. Is it big or bigger? Great. The comparative adjective is bigger. Let's look for more comparative and superlative adjectives. First picture. Short, shorter, shortest. Can you guess which one is the comparative adjective? Yes, shorter is the comparative adjective. Short, shorter, shortest. Which one is the superlative adjective? Yes, shortest is a superlative adjective. Now let's move on to the second picture. Strong, stronger, strongest. Strong, stronger, strongest. Can you guess which one is the superlative adjective? Yes, is the strongest. Strong, stronger, strongest. Which one is the comparative adjective? Stronger is the comparative adjective. Now let's move to the last picture. Sad, sadder, saddest. Sad, sadder, saddest. Can you guess which one is a superlative adjective? Is saddest, the saddest. And which one is a comparative adjective? Yes, sadder. Well done. My father is older than my uncle. My father is older than my uncle. Older. We have used a comparative adjective to compare my father and my uncle. Mount Everest is the tallest mountain in the world. Mount Everest is the tallest mountain in the world. We have used the tallest superlative adjective to describe the Mount Everest with all the other mountains of the world. I hope you enjoyed today's grammar lesson, comparative and superlative adjectives. Try to find more and more new comparatives and superlatives and make sentences with them. Until we meet next time, keep studying and don't forget to have fun too. Stay safe, children.